To the Bud Show, folks. Bruce Hendrick here at our Reedsville studios. Had a caller asking about Mike Elder. I have the man that knows all things in Martinsville and Henry County on the phone, Mr. Bob Sharp. Welcome to the Bud Show, sir.
Yes, sir.
Tell me all you know about Mike Elder and what happened today, sir.
Well, interesting case, he had gone before the juvenile domestic court judge in the city of Martinsville and accused and so many words of the judge not being truthful. And the judge held him in contempt of court, gave him 10 days in jail. He appealed that to the circuit court, which the case originated in Henry County, so it went before Judge Williams.
Right.
There was indictment day and also what they call felony day for people to set cases with attorneys, and they go through the case. The courtroom was packed. An interesting thing happened. Prior to him to be called to the bench before the judge, the sheriff of Henry County, along with one of the bailiffs, removed Mike from the courtroom and took him back in a small room. He came back. Then he went before the judge, and he expressed to the judge the concerns that he was intimidated by the sheriff and the deputy in the closed room, and that there was some corruption involving his paperwork. Of course, the judge asked him, he said, what does this have to do with this case of contempt? He said, well, Judge, he said, I want to file a motion to remove you from this case because your name is on a lot of the paperwork that I have. So the judge said, well, let's back up here a minute. He said, let's get you an attorney. So we appointed him an attorney with the public defender's office, and he set the date up. He said, you come back that date with your attorney and have your motions in order and file your necessary paperwork, and, we'll make a decision there whether I recuse myself. And they set an April date for that particular hearing.
So, Bob, now, since this is a contempt of court charge against him, he had to be given the chance to get his own attorney. Was that right?
That's correct.
Gotcha. Any in Virginia, that any charge against you that carries a potential jail term, you have to be given the opportunity, or at least to have a court-appointed attorney for you on it. But now, this motion to recuse, what do you think? Again, I'm not asking you, I understand, you're not a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer either on that one. Do you think this is a stall tactic, or what do you think about this?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Mike Elder, and he showed me right there in the courtroom, he's got a court order dated, I think it was something like March the 7th, 2009. I may not be accurate on the date.
Right.
And it's, the judge is Judge Williams. He's got another copy of the same order with another judge. Now, that just doesn't happen. That's just not right. Something's wrong with that paperwork. That's just one item that he's got.
Wow.
He's had the paperwork he had with him this morning was over 8 inches thick. And, this may be a case, and I suggested this to him, of identity theft, but some way possible that all these things that are happening to him, that somebody has got his identification and got it, but he's got a lot of paperwork that is really absurd. I think you're going to see some things happening, but his contention is now that this system that has gone against him is of such irregularity that he has the constitutional right to go into the federal court system to have this looked into. And I think ultimately that's his goal, and I think ultimately with what happened this morning, you're going to see that happen.
This, as much as we like to joke about Mike, and everything that he always tries to make a spectacle of himself, some of our callers, call him, an attention grabber, stuff like that. Mike's well-spoken for what he does. Yeah, his temper gets to him, and he doesn't have the best, demeanor at times, but Mike has always impressed me, at least, as a person, not as a Star News person, but as a regular person. Mike has always impressed me with the way that he handles the facts and the way he talks.
Absolutely. He's got his paperwork in line, and it is absolutely, it's insane what has been done over a course of time. Now, I've dealt with him kind of from the beginning of this, and he started telling me this stuff, and I've been looking at this paperwork and studying it, and it's pretty complicated. You have to look at it. But he's got such things that warrants and things that were issued that's signed by the magistrate. He took it to the magistrate, and the magistrate said, that's not my signature. I looked at the signature myself, and it's not even a signature. It's just a scribble.
Wow.
Like heads or tails of the letter. I mean, this is official documents coming out of our court system some way, somehow. And there's a lot of impropriety here where there was representation on the alleged, let's say, victim or the female where the child was born,
Right.
And then a relationship with the court, the judge that made determination at some point. And then there's documentation or non-documentation of blood tests that were said they were taken, and when they weren't taken, Mike contends it was never taken in the time that they said it was. It's really a bizarre case, and somebody at some point is going to look at this, and I think he's got the codes and the statute that will get this ultimately in the federal court system. I think you're going to see this jump court.
Well, right. If the U.S. Attorney's Office starts getting to this, he goes to the Attorney General and it's handed down to the U.S. Attorney. This could be, yet a far-reaching investigation. They start with this, and then they start expanding on any other improprieties they find. This could turn out to be a pretty big development.
It absolutely is. And I don't know if you know this or not, but I have said this on the air multiple times. Myself has been trying to get before a grand jury. And I've already talked with the former sheriff of Henry County once he was released off of federal probation, where he was convicted in federal court for lying to the FBI.
Right.
He's willing to go before the grand jury to testify to of illegalities and improprieties within the system, within our government. And we have yet to have a grand jury notify or call any of us before the grand jury. And the way that process works, the grand jury, the last thing the judge tells them when he's impaneling them is, if you know of any criminal activity of a private or government agency, you have the right to look into that. So we're just waiting for one of these grand jurors to call us in so this information can be revealed. Once that's done, it only takes 4 members to vote, and then they can impanel a special grand jury that will look into it for criminal charges to be proceeded with.
So grand juries really have a lot of latitude on what they can do. They've got a lot of subpoena powers to bring things in as well, too. A prosecutor can start them off in one direction, but if a grand jury gets together and they start going into, into another direction, they pretty much have the run of the court system with everything they've got. The way you're explaining it to me?
That's exactly right. And the way it works is with this grand jury, you go into, they have to vote on if it needs to be looked into from an investigative standpoint. Then they appoint a special grand jury, which is separate from the grand jury, and then it becomes a top secret undercover type investigation, and they look into the allegations, call witnesses. They have access to police investigators and anybody at will that they can subpoena to get to the bottom. And of course, they use the power of perjury. If someone comes in there, they can prove they lied. As we saw in the last special grand jury on the jail system here in Henry County, there were 2 people that were charged with lying under oath. And that's only the first time in Henry County a special grand jury has ever been impaneled, by the way.
Right. Now, you're talking about former Sheriff Castle there. Now, for somebody that lives outside Henry County like me, I don't really know the inner workings and how he's taken. Do you think that, again, I'm not going to ask to put you on the spot. You can definitely not answer this question. Do you think Frank Castle still has credibility in the Henry County system? Do you think people believe him, or having been with all the stuff that he's got, does he carry a lot of baggage with him?
I can tell you what I saw. It's beyond credibility. He's got documentation. It's not a matter of whether you believe it or not. He's got things that are in writing that needs to be taken to a grand jury that I've actually had knowledge of.
Wow. And I've got to wonder, just as a private citizen that visits Henry County all the time, what is this doing inside the Lane Perry administration? Are there people starting to get scared about things? For lack of a term, I don't want to say this as talking about murders, but there's people that may know where the bodies are buried. That phrase that comes out there. Does this affect the Lane Perry administration?
Well, I think it certainly does from a public's perspective. There's always been a problem since the indictments, but he has done everything he can do in that department to clear and clean that up. And some of the things that I'm speaking of here, that's not really related to Perry's administration. This is things outside his administration, or things that happened that have not been revealed, or things that have not been looked into legally, that the FBI either skipped over for some reason or didn't go into to dwell in it. And of course, when the sheriff got arrested, that kind of put a stop. Interesting thing was when they did the special grand jury, the one they did on the jail, they never called Frank Castle to question him about any of that stuff. And if you look at the timeline, it's not all under his administration. But I don't think it's the corruption that's been alleged is really centered around the Perry administration. I think he's done a good job to bring his officers in order. And you won't find really a better police force, from my observation. I deal with them on a daily basis anywhere in the state of Virginia.
It's good to know. So we started this off with Mike Elder and his issues. Now we're getting into this contempt of court case, but he's just set up the dominoes with this motion to recuse the judge and getting the counsel. This is a set of dominoes that's set up that very well can get the U.S. attorneys involved. Once the U.S. attorney gets involved, the investigative part of the U.S. Attorney Service, like you said, is the FBI. They can come in, and everybody knows, the feds can pretty much do what they want to on it. This could be what Howard Cosell says, a developing situation.
No question about it. And, there's just a lot of things that are up in the air that people, ordinary people, need to sit down, look into, and investigate. There's just too many irregularities to just ignore this. It's been ongoing. I know Mike Elder irritates people, but he's so frustrated, I think, in his own way, he doesn't know how to speak out.
Right.
But he's taken the proper channels now. It's in the legal system, and we're going to see this thing, as you say, a developing situation that's going to eventually reach an end to where it'll unfold, where I think you'll see some sort of investigation or conclusion.
Well, Bob, I want to thank you for your expert commentary and analysis on the situation, on it, being inside the Henry County way, in the experience you've had with the law enforcement, the experience you've had with Mike Elder. You really help a lot, to get our people to do it. And like you said, I'm guilty. I'm going to plead myself guilty to this. Sometimes I blow off of what Mike Elder says simply because of the way he says it. But now, if there's some substance and everything going like what you're seeing on this one, I have to step back and I have to give himself, a lot more credibility on it just based on what you said, Bob. Look, thank you so much, Bob. Appreciate you taking the time to give us a holler on this, okay?
Yes, sir, and you have a good weekend.
Likewise, man. You too. All righty. So there's your answer, folks. This is getting to developing. It wasn't what I was expecting on this one. I was expecting, a contempt of court hearing to go ahead and, affirm the decision or take it this way. But what Bob has told us, that during Mike's appearance in circuit court, he's appealing his 10 days he got for contempt of court on it. He said that, sheriff's officers, took him they called him out of the courtroom, took him into a small room, and then he came back and said he was intimidated by them, and is going to file a motion to recuse the judge because the judge is involved in some of this. Bob described it as over 8 inches worth of paperwork on it. And again, according to what Bob just said, that there are some paperwork that has some irregularities with it. This is a developing situation. Caller, you're on with Bruce.
Bruce, that's